Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, but you probably knew that. But you don't know is that I've got a great guest for you this hour. And she is an author, and her book has been out in just the last couple weeks. So we're excited about the release of Silenced Whispers. And the author's name is Afarin, and you're going to say your last name so I don't screw it up again.
Afarin is fine. That's my name. That's what I'm known for. But my surname is Bellisario. It's a good Italian name. So Italian, Persian household, we are all set. We have covered all the ancient world.
Yes, indeed. And you were born in Iran, or Iran. Is it Iran or Iran, or is it tomato?
Iran. Yes, it's Iran. That's fine.
It's very good. And you grew up there, and you ended up through a lot of hard work and circumstances, ended up in the United States. We're awfully glad to have you here. And we're also glad that you told this story, because it's not there. I'm getting the opportunity to talk to lots of people that have life experience in other parts of the world, and I'm getting a clearer understanding that we don't actually tell everything in our history books the way that it actually happened, and how difficult it was, and how we played a role in all of that. And Iran is a perfect example of how the Western powers, Russia, the Eastern power, and England, and later on the United States, and how we played a role that ended up being Iran of today, and with the Ayatollah and how it's being run today. And so, first of all, I want to thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
It's great to talk to you because, first of all, this is not an autobiography. This is a novel, but it has roots in historical fact, correct?
Yes, it is. The bone of the book. I mean, the historical events really happened, and I did a lot of research on that. But the story is a story, and hopefully you'll take the book to the beach and enjoy it. I know some of my beta readers read it in subway, and it's quite all right in the airplane, wherever you want. It's a story. It's a good story. But hopefully you will also learn a little bit more about Iran, about its people, and about what happened that brought us to today. Not quite, but close enough. It gives you the roots of the problem a bit.
Well, it's like in the early 20th century. Correct me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, but in the early 20th century, Iran was really much controlled by Russian influence and British influence, and they installed at one point the Shah of Iran and stuff. And so but within the fabric of the country itself, there was lots of division and progressiveness versus conservativeness. Gee, that doesn't sound like anything that's going on today.
True. Traditionalists versus progressives, and so yes, it's all in the past. It's all in the past. We don't know anything about it.
Well, maybe, just maybe, your book can help us understand how we can work better together and not blame each other for different things, and figure out a better way to run our country, because I dare say I still think Iran is still in the process of learning how to best run their country for the betterment of all of their people. Would I be wrong in that?
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, things are, but as long as there are emotions, it's bad for people, and people suffer and everything else. But as long as it's not rigid, as long as some people at least are uh, moving there, and in this particular case, we've seen, I don't know, 2009, Green Revolution. Eh, these are still
Come back. Come back. You're listening to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got a momentary pause. Hopefully, that she will be able to. Oh, there she is. There, you're back.
Oh, I'm back. I'm back. Technical difficulty.
Uh,
A bug in the system.
well, it happen. It does happen from time to time, but it's an important work that you're doing. How have the reviews been for it? I assume that they've been very positive.
Very positive so far. We haven't had the professional reviewers just yet, but people who teach literature, people who are writers themselves, they have reviewed the book. We have review from somebody who has been in the book business for 30 years. We're still waiting for the more professional ones, but as you know, it takes a long time. They say, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months. So they have stacks of books, and it's waiting, but we're hopeful, and I think it's a good book. I think so far we haven't heard anybody complaining or returning the book, but
So let me ask you,
yeah.
what was your purpose for writing the book?
Well, I think that it's partially, what started it is to tell the story of the country and tell the story of this transformation. And as you said it's the situation now in America and the rest of the world is very much similar. And both of them, in both situations, we see a lot of rapid technological change that takes some people much easier than others. And then, the rest of the people are trying to catch up. They're trying to see who they are, because, especially when the technology comes from outside. In Iran, it came from the West and Russia, and it was alien to many people. So that I just wanted to change to tell that story, but I also wanted to tell the story of people who have to live through this period of transition. And again, as you pointed out, it echoes of the past is still with us, and the not only the effect of then, but also ourselves are going through this transition. And some people have a very hard time with changes, and we just can't ignore that. It's true. So my purpose to begin with was that, but it also wanted to do it in a package that's fun for people to read. You don't go out and get some history book and read it. It's boring. Books are supposed to be fun. When I was growing up, I read a book a day, sort of. Some of them was great literature. Some of them were trash, but they were all reading and understanding other people's feelings and who they were, um, and hopefully also feel connected to them, connected to each other as well. It's our humanities that should come out. So that was the purpose of telling the story. All stories have some lessons underneath, some hidden messages, perhaps. And this one, the story is the story of transformation, but a book is hopefully entertaining.
I'm sure that it is very entertaining, but it also has an important message,
Yes.
which I also like, because we don't recognize in the United States we've had are certain ways of being. Oh, by the way, this is also on the Brushwood Media Network, and so it will be listened to worldwide. And so when I say the United States, that's only a portion of our audience, and there are
Sure.
other parts in the world, as an example, like India or in the Middle East, or that there are some still
Mhm.
traditionalists that believe in things, as an example, dictating what a woman should wear and what she should not wear, dictating
Exactly.
when she's going to get married, whether or not she's going to learn to read or not. Is she going to be a slave in somebody's house, or or a servant, if you will, and live that way? And so there's lots of different areas in our world that are still rife with that sort of thing. And Iran, because of some of the traditional viewpoints that they've had over time, are still in that traditional mode that is good for a few, but I sense that it's not good for everybody. Am
That
I
is
wrong in
correct.
that?
No, you're absolutely correct. That and it's just Iran is still going through the same kind of transition. Just maybe the ratio of people and the structure of the power has changed, but still, this is the same situation as you pointed it out in many countries in the world, including in India, including I have friends from all over the world. I have friends from um, Middle East, North Africa. I have friends from India, and I see that the this we still questioning. I mean, believe it or not, we still are questioning our role in this country. We still, still okay. Should a woman be a CEO or shouldn't? I mean, maybe the issues are less cerebral or more cerebral and less every day, but it's there. So I think that it's the issues are there, the issues are alive. It's sometimes easier to put the whole story and issues and everything in the past because we all think that the past is past. But yeah, it's if I were to write a book um, that happens in contemporary time, perhaps a lot of issues will be very similar.
Well, what's interesting about that? I was interviewing a young lady from India,
Mhm.
and she was telling me. Now, first of all, if you don't know, and this is kind of going to be a little bit of a history lesson for my friends in the United States, because they may not know this. There are a billion people who live in India. 250 million of
Yes.
them, or almost the same number of Americans that are here.
Mhm.
250 million are Muslim, but 750 million are Hindu.
Yes.
And because of that, the Muslims are considered a minority, and so
Mhm.
they're not afforded, at least according to her, perhaps you can help me
Yes.
with this. According to her, they're not afforded with the same rights as the majority Hindu population. And so young Muslim girls oftentimes get farmed out to Hindu families and are then either slaves or servants, and the girls are there to clean the house, and there are rules around how what they can do and what they can't do, and what bathrooms they can use and all that kind of stuff. And there's also um, the Hindu family would pay the father, who may not have anything to do with the daughter, but
Mhm.
they pay him so that he can go do whatever he's going to do with that money.
Mhm.
Is that
That's
is that true?
correct. Yeah, that is correct. Unfortunately, it is true. I mean, it is true that there's segregation. There are second-class citizens. There are, there are all kinds of things like that is still happening. It's unfortunate, but it is, and it's um, it's unfortunate that it's still going on. So. Um, I think that she's correct in that.
which is because that's where when we start talking about trafficking
Mhm.
and trafficking either in the sex trade or even in just the household
Yeah.
servant trade, that is big business in some parts of our
Yes.
world still.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like buying a bride, for example, is still practiced in parts of China, and we don't think of China as a undeveloped country, but it definitely is there, and there's still going on. So, um, you know, uh,
So
so
you
the
can
issues are still with us. Yes.
you can like buy a bride in China.
Oh
Do you,
yeah, I mean, especially in the rural areas.
do you know how much they cost? And
I don't know. We gotta find a broker.
wouldn't that
No.
isn't that interesting that there is a profession in this world still in the 21st century where people are there are brokers out there and probably with a portfolio of different women and what they
Oh,
look
sure.
like and kids and say this is would you like to buy this one or would you like to buy that one do you know it just doesn't seem possible that we could still be having this in some parts of the world and sadly I think Iran is one of those places that still
Yes.
is has got traditional old time traditional religious values and so that means that a 14-year-old girl like as an example in
Mhm.
your book a
Sure.
14-year-old girl can be married off to a 55-year-old dude. It's
That
like
was quite actually. It wasn't even unusual. I mean, it was the deal. People married, and yeah, it was no big deal. I mean, she could be second wife, she could be the first wife, and they were all married at the same time. By the way, it was co-wife, so to speak.
so
Uh,
technically how many how many wives are you allowed to have and do you have to take like protein pills and stuff to stay
I'm sure I don't know, but yeah, I mean, technically you can have four wives, but now in Iran, there's also in the Shia community, there's also another kind of marriage called temporary marriage. So you can have 100 temporary wives if you want to. There's no limit on that. And you can have concubines. My great grandfather, and I said that in my bio, my great grandfather had 25 wives and concubines.
Now, so a couple of thoughts I have about that. I couldn't keep one woman satisfied. How do you keep 25 satisfied?
I don't know. You can ask. Well, he's dead. He's long dead. But I mean, fortunately for most of his children, only married one woman, and most of his sons. But that I know of. I mean, they could have had some other wives that I don't know, but yes, yeah.
So,
Uh,
why is it, do you think, and this is just my naivety, I think, but why is it that you think that women have been put into places like that and treated with in my opinion disrespect in so many
mhm.
places for so many years is it because men have got this thing about power or what's the deal
Well, I know. I mean, this is actually something that is being quite discussed between the anthropologists. I'm not an anthropologist, but Harari, which is a great Israeli writer and thinker, he had a book called *Sapiens*, and in that he talks about the structure of the power and how it has changed throughout the world. But he also ponders this question that why is it that in almost every culture we have women subjugated. He thinks that maybe it has to do with the pregnancy and having to take care of children, so they need somebody to take care of them and their child, who as the child older, as it grows, becomes more independent. That could be one reason. It could be physical strength. That's another potential reason. But that practice is, it's all over the world. I'm not 100% sure how did that came about, and how do we, and of course we have made lots of progress. As I said, my great grandfather had 25 wives. I have a PhD from MIT, so we have made some progress. Maybe not quite as much as we want, but certainly is
I, I,
you've come a long way.
yeah, I just can't fathom having pissing off 25 women at the same time and having to live with all of them. That would be.
I don't know, but I mean, I'm sure that there were lots of intrigues, and maybe they were intentionally made some intrigue so that they keep them all fighting each other versus fighting you. I don't.
That's way too much work for me. But
Yes.
I would tell you, if you are listening to this in the United States and saying, "Oh, we're so far advanced from that," I want to remind you that women could not vote in this country until
Yes.
like 1925, and they
Yes.
could not get their own checkbook or their own credit card in the 1970s. So we are, the degree may be a little bit different, but and by the way, we're still paying women like 25% less than men, and there's a whole bunch of different things that we really need to work on. And now we've got this new thing with the women autonomy over their own bodies. So
Yes.
there's we are far from perfect in this country. There may be degrees and stuff. By the way, we are talking with Afarin Bellisario, I think.
Yep.
Hey, yay.
Super. Super.
Need to take a quick break, and we're back. She's the author of Silenced Whispers, and she's a delightful lady. And we're going to talk about her story, how she got to the United States, how she got to MIT, and all of that when we come right back. Stay with us.
Sure.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Well, I hope that little song woke you up a little bit, because we're talking with a great author, and she's written the book Silence Whispers. If you want to go find out more about her, you can go to afarin.net. And that's one of them. And then you've got two of them, and the other one is silencedwhispers.com. And you can find out all about her work, the book, which has only been out a couple of weeks. Be the first on your block to get it, and it's a great read, and you'll enjoy it. But I got to ask you, because you were born in Iran, you grew up in there, and then suddenly, magically, you ended up in the United States. How'd that happen?
Well, it's not quite suddenly and magically. When I first imagine, I took TWA. That was my flying carpet. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a TWA flight. But I came here to go to school, and at first I went to New York University, and I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from them. But I always wanted to go to MIT, and first they wouldn't let me in because I didn't have the. When I was in Iran, I started my education in University of Tehran, but it was turmoil all the time. We had, strikes and lots and lots of protests. And one day it was increasing the price of bus. Another day was something in the school. Third day was some other. Anyways, but it was very, very tumultuous back in the 70s, and so I ended up moving to New York University, as I said. So I ended up not studying at all, you know. So I had a good time, but not really, you know. That
You're
kind of
entitled.
was in the back. Yes, and so I came to New York University. I was there in New York for 1 year, and then I transferred to MIT, and that's how I ended up here. So not quite magical, not quite magic carpet, but you know, just sort of the normal. And I was very lucky that uh, got good grades. When I was at MIT, I got fellowships, and so my studies were supported by the good graces of the university and you know, generosity of U.S. government, perhaps in some cases, and so it wasn't traumatic or anything, but definitely hard. Especially in the beginning, because no matter how much English or how much another language you know, once you get into that country, you discover that you don't really, you can't even talk. I don't know, with a taxi driver or with normal people, because normal people don't talk like they do in books. And you know, I mean, I had American teachers, but American teachers in the classroom, they are not telling you what is spoken in a colloquial English around different cities. And New York is, of course, a big mega city, and so it was a little hard back, you know, hard to understand the lectures, and hard to. But you know, the thing about me is that I'm very tenacious, and I gave that. You know, tenacity and never you know, never say never kind of attitude to my hero, my Goha, the lady who is the heroine of the book, is the main character in the book. But I'm, you know, every you deal with whatever you're supposed to deal with, and fortunately, it was not. Um, I didn't have to cross any mountains. I was in Toronto last week, and I was listening to the tales of people, how they escaped and how they got themselves to the United States or to Canada uh, after the revolution, or around the revolution. So uh, I didn't have that story, but I really, after hearing all those stories, I'm gonna write another book about those stories of people who escaped. So.
Well, but at
My,
the same time, you grew up in a now, did you grow up in northern Tehran or southern Tehran?
well, I had one foot here, one foot there. My grandparents lived in a very traditional part of Tehran. It's called Khani Abad. It's you know, it's very traditional. It's actually, there's a little, a small market that's connected to the main bazaar. So you know, a lot of women, traditional women, you go to the bazaar chair, and bazaar chair means a small bazaar. You know, you go there and you see women wearing traditional chadors, very conservative. Um, I don't know. So that was where my grandparents lived. And I actually, my first grade, I went to school not far from their house because of some other situations we won't get into. But my own parents and you know, my uncles and things like that, they lived there closer to University of Tehran, which today is probably central Tehran, but back then was sort of northern Tehran. It was much more intellectual. There were European restaurants, and I don't know, everybody will, ladies, girls would wear mini skirts. We had a department store. You know, the life was totally different. So I remember that first time I went to Europe, it wasn't too foreign to me. It wasn't, you know, it's just like, oh, totally different. So it's because of but that by itself created a lot of problems, because you had to, for example, get dressed more conservatively to go to grandparents' house. And so but you get used to it. For me, it was not so bad, because my grandfather from my father's side from my paternal grandfather. He was very much of an intellectual. He was from Northern Caucasus, which is now Republic of Azerbaijan. He had been in Russia and Odessa, so he was very open to new ideas and education for his girls. And my aunts all went to school. They got a diploma. My father was a doctor, and so my family was used to this, the more modern technology. But there were a lot of families, especially around my grandfather's house, who lived there, and they were very traditional, very, very conservative people.
So, as I understand it, you living where you lived could wear a miniskirt,
Yeah.
but if you went into the wrong neighborhood, you were
Yeah.
in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you needed
Correct.
to get out of there in a quick New York minute.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I would not. I mean, I would be ostracized. That it would not be a good situation. Yes, and vice versa. If one morning I'd get up in my own house and I put a hijab on and went out of the house, everybody would look at me as though I'm a domestic. I'm not from the neighborhood. I'm somehow.
You're an import from another part of the country that was brought
exactly.
there to be a servant of somebody that lived there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would have been so. It worked both ways, or not worked both ways, if you will.
Afarin, I gotta tell you, do you realize that 1970 was 50 years ago?
Yes, I do.
I figured you might, because
Yes.
you and I are of a certain age. We need to take a quick station break, but when we come back, I'm going to, because it was 50 years ago, there are people in this country that were not born when the Shah was overtaken
Yes.
and the embassy was taken, and Ted Koppel became a everyday name and all that kind of good stuff. We're gonna go over that period when we come back, because I think it's really
Sure.
important to understand it from a different perspective, or at least from a perspective somebody who was you had already left by that point, but you were really aware of what was going on. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We're talking with Afarin Bellisario. Thank you very much. And and she's the author of the book, which is called Silenced Whispers. It's only been out a couple of weeks. It will be worth your time to go and get that book. It's at Amazon and everywhere else. So Silenced Whispers. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and on the Brushwood Media Network. We're glad that you is here. If I could speak English, that would be even better. And Afarin Bellisario is here, and I wanted to touch bases and have her. I'll give you my take of the 1970s and what that was about, and I would love for your input as to whether or not I know what I'm talking about or not. which was in the 70s. We had meaning the United States, Great Britain. I'm not sure if Russia was involved at this point, but they had installed the Shah of Iran for a period of time. He was not voted in. He was actually installed by the Western powers. And by the time the 1970s came around, he was in poor health because he had cancer, and he was going back, I believe, going back and forth between Egypt for treatment and coming back. And one of the trips that he was gone, there was a revolution, and I think that's when it happened, and it was like in the mid to late 70s, and that's when the Ayatollah Khomeini took control of the country and basically kicked the Shah out. So he was now in exile. He died shortly thereafter. But then in 1970, I believe it was 78. It was either 78 or 79. During the revolution, they took control of the embassy, of the United States embassy, and held, I believe it was 53 people hostage.
Yes, yes.
And they were held hostage for well over 100 days or 200 days, or I can't remember. Do you remember how many days it was that they were held hostage?
Oh, it was over a year. The hostages were taken in November of 1979, and they weren't released until the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. I think it was early January of 1981. So it was
January
over
20th.
a year.
Yeah,
Yes.
January 20th.
Whatever
Yes.
it was. But yes, it's after Ronald Reagan made a deal with the Ayatollah, and I don't know, I wasn't in that plane, but apparently he sent the cake to the Ayatollah, and they had some kind of a deal. So that's but yes, you're correct that I mean. Shah was very much a child of greater power, and during his reign in 1953, we had a nationalist prime minister elected because in Iran, based on constitution, everybody who becomes a minister or prime minister, like England a bit, has to be elected. So Mohammad Mossadegh was elected as a minister, as prime minister. So he was, he was quite popular. Nobody's 100% popular. I'm sure that he had many people who didn't agree with him, but many people did. And but what he wanted was to nationalize oil, and of course, it wasn't something that England especially cared for. United States has plenty of oil, so it was not as important for them. But the United States at that point wanted a buffer between themselves and Soviet Union. They wanted to stop communism. Same policy that was instituted elsewhere in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And so in the 60s, Shah was quite moderate. I mean, he understood that this country needs to be have given some freedoms. So in the 60s, basically was, there were lots of freedoms. You couldn't talk about the Shah or his policies or whatever, but there was a lot of other things that people could discuss. And then, I don't know whether that to be the case. I'm not in the history books, but at least the vision from Iran is that Shah was very close to Nixon. And when Nixon became president, of course, he was given a freer reign in Iran. And then he was the oil embargo, which tripled the price of oil. And he was a big beneficiary. It was extremely inflationary in Iran. But that's sort of like gave him a carte blanche to I don't know, have coronations and the 2500th anniversary of Persian Empire. So he started spending tremendous amount of money, and Iran is not only traditionalists for good part. There were a lot of poor people. There were people who kind of looked at it and said, God, I mean, he's lavishing this on, I don't know, second class royalty of European descent, and we are here hungry, and we can't feed our children, we can't, send our kids to school, and that was the beginning of the revolution, sort of people uprising. And as I said, I went to school then, and it was a lot of turmoil, people, especially young people, they didn't like his policies and things like that. But it got worse and worse as time passed on. So Shah, a lot of his policies were, he tightened everything and then he let everything go. And so there were quite a lot of turmoil. And Americans at that point, where it was after pre-Vietnam War, I don't think that they wanted to get involved much. And there were lots of problems in America itself. Nixon's, it was traumatic for people in this country as well, going through Watergate and then having,
Well, and from my point of view, if you think $5 a gallon of gas is way too much to spend, I want you to think back in the 1970s, they had what's called gas lines because they didn't have enough gas for all the cars. So you would have to stand or go in line to try and get gas at any price. And also inflation was rampant, and it was running like you could buy a mortgage on a house. My sister in 1978 paid 15% for a mortgage for her house.
Yes,
And it was
18%, 15%. It was, inflation was horrible in this country. But the same thing in Iran. It was horrible because everybody got a lot of money in the beginning when the oil money was flowing in, and then the oil money wasn't flowing in, and there were lots of bad policies, and so people revolted. It was the revolution itself wasn't too bloody. Shah, as you pointed it out, he was very sick. People didn't know, but he had some kind of a cancer, so he was not in the position to be very effective, and so he left. And then the revolution happened. Khomeini came back, he was in France, and in the beginning of the revolution, it was what we call in Iran the spring of freedom, because what happened was that, as I said, we had this very popular prime minister in the 50s, the Mehdi Bazargan, who was a professor at university. He was probably one of the last remnant of that National Front, and he became a short-term prime minister. He became prime minister, and I think Bani Sad became president. But I'm not sure. Again, I'm talking rumors. I don't really know, but the rumors has that Khomeini orchestrated the hostage taking, because what happened was that once the hostages were taken, then both prime minister resigned. He resigned. He said that this is against all international law. I'm a law and order person. So he resigned, and then Bani Sadr had to leave the country, and so Khomeini became the absolute monarch, absolute ruler. I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't a monarch, but he was definitely an autocratic, theocratic country. And when you have that kind of power, and the country was traumatized, so
they're still working through it today. But the cool thing is, you were able to come to the United States, and you've had a really quite a good, interesting life here in the United States as well.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I was one of probably the luckiest ones, because I still was in school when revolution happened. I was still in school when the hostages were taken. So in some sense, the huge amount of choices. When graduated, hostages were still in Iran, and I decided that it's not a good time to go back. And obviously,
A smart move on your part, I must say.
well, I mean, I don't know how smart. I mean, of course, when you just have to go with the flow, so to speak. This is a hand that you are given. So for me, I made the choice. Of course, the choice. But it was not. Being young, you can adjust to things. My mother, for example, my parents came just before the revolution in the just before Khomeini went to Tehran, and I convinced them to come. I convinced them because my father, this is gonna pass. It's gonna be revolution. It's gonna be tomorrow. It's gonna be paradise, and as wise as my father was, he couldn't see. He couldn't see the forest for the trees, but.
Well,
And so,
so that happens. By the way, we're talking with Afarin Bellisario,
Afarin, just leave it at Afarin. I'm happy with that.
and she's written the book Silenced Whispers.
It's
It's
right
a
here.
really interesting and good novel. And when we come
Yeah.
back, I would like to talk to you about your transition here. I know English was a little tough because we don't talk a very good brand of English, and it depends on regionally where you are. But some of the things that when you first got here, that were new to you, and the things that you really loved about this country, and why you really ultimately decided to stay here. You're listening to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and we're going to return right after this message.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got a great author here. She's written the novel Silenced Whispers. It's kind of a history about Iran in the early 20th century and what they had to go through and stuff. But I want to fast forward to when before you got to MIT, and
Yes.
you had just got here. What noticeable differences did you find from where you grew up to what was going on in the United States, as far as day-to-day living, grocery shopping, going to the bank, stuff like that?
Well, I think the first and foremost is that in America, you can say anything you want about anybody you want. It's you can say, "Oh, Jimmy Carter is a dork," whatever. I don't, God bless him if he's still alive. But you can say anything you want. There's no in Iran. If I were to say anything that was sort of like not so good, I had to look around me, and you grew up with this fear of as much as I have a big mouth, I say whatever I want. I was very very cautious about who I'm speaking with, and don't go any place else. But the freedom of saying what you want, the fact that for example, even in the 70s, you had a New York Post, which is totally different from New York Times. You may like one and not like one, but you may like something from here. But people had different newspapers that obviously everybody was holding a certain standards. You couldn't really say lies in out and out lies, but you could say what you wanted to. So I think that was for me the most important thing, that freedom of doing of saying what you want, of trying. And then the other thing is that that was again refreshing to me, and it was that as long as you didn't do anything criminal or bad or whatever, you could. I mean, I rented an apartment. I didn't like it, and I left my security deposit, but I was able to go and get another apartment. So it wasn't sort of so you could make mistakes, because my first apartment was a mistake, and still live to tell the story. So that was another impressive thing for me. The third thing that I remember that is that first time I had an apartment. I went to supermarket and wanted to buy stuff, and when first time you buy stuff, you buy staples, you buy sugar. So I was gonna buy a pack of sugar, and this lady came to me and says, "No," and I said, "What?" She said, it was a boycott of sugar in New York City back then, because the prices had gone up or whatever. So the fact that people could organize in the way that boycott like sugar or whatever, those are the kinds of things that I have never seen. So those are very refreshing to me. The ability to live your life within reason. Again, New York, of course, is a little different from other parts of the country, but still. And then the other thing is that people are friendly. It's like I got a job as an intern in the New York hospital for special surgery. And the first day I showed up, I didn't know anyone, but a fellow came and said, "Oh, do you want to have?" A lady doctor. She was very friendly. She says, "You want to have lunch with me?" And we went to the cafeteria together. So these are things that are very impressive about American culture to me. And the easy smile, the easy way, and it goes all the. I mean, people growing up in this country don't value their freedom. We think that things are bad. We think that this is not good, whatever. But they don't value the freedom, and they don't value that we have to fight for it. We have to treasure it. So that was for me the most impressive things.
That's really true. Now, after you get back of after you got out of MIT and graduated from there, how did you spend your career before you started writing?
Oh, I was in the high-tech area, so I started my professional life working for what is now Raytheon Labs. I did a lot of studies in signal processing and underwater acoustics, many of them for the U.S. government, for U.S. military. And then I went back and got an MBA and worked for a lot of semiconductor companies. I worked for Intel. I'm sure most people have heard. I worked for Analog Devices. I almost worked for Microsoft, but I don't know. It's too rainy in Seattle. I'm sorry.
Is not. Okay, well, maybe it is.
No. Seattle is a beautiful, beautiful city. My stepdaughter lives there, and she's quite happy. So I'm, I love Seattle. It's this beautiful city. But yeah. And so I worked in high tech, different companies. Like everybody else in the high tech, they move from one place to the other. But
now I'm just curious, and I can't remember if I asked this before, but what was it? What was it that motivated you to write the book? Because you knew the history and it was part of your story. Was it something that you felt like you wanted to be able to get out there so that other people could get an idea of what that story was?
Well, I think that the idea came when you are starting your career in high tech. I always wanted to write. Writing is my passion. I love to write. But in terms of what to write, I lived in the high tech area. Then one day, you become more mature. So you think about I mean, I was very active in the beginning of digital cellular networks. I remember vaporware showing smartphones, and I was in the 3G area and the telecom area. And one day I was just thinking about, look, this interconnectivity of cell phones and smartphones, they're great in one sense, but they're not great in many others, because they are the interconnectivity doesn't mean intimacy. And we have this notion that internet is going to make us all connected. No, it's not. It's very artificial. More and more we live in silos, and that kind of made me think, oh, what? Why? I mean, technology is changing us. But then I thought about the fact that technology has been changing us for 200 years. And certainly, and then I thought about, okay, so what was so different in Iran? What made people starting to divide from each other? So I merged the two problems, or two ideas that I was working on, into one. And I said, okay, I'm going to write about an example of technology changing the society, or modernization changing a society, and not managing it, creating a lot of divisions. And again, you always write for your own time, even though you are trying to sort of write about the past. It's always about our own time. And in our own time, I see that happening. I see that, people, technology changing us, and I think we have to manage that. We have to come to a situation where our humanity comes first, our sense of connectivity comes first.
Well, we've got just 1 minute left, and I want to make sure that, first of all, we tell everybody about Silenced Whispers. It's a novel, and Afarin Bellisario is the author, and it's well worth your time to go look at it. So now we've got about a minute. Can you give me a detailed look at AI in 30 seconds?
That's a scary one. That would be for the next time. But I think that is we have come to a position as humans to think about ourselves and our society, and make a decision whether or not we want to be masters of our own destiny or not. And my book is about agency, about a woman who starts from a position of enslavement, if you will. I mean, maybe she's not enslaved, but she lives a life of enslavement, and she fights for her own agency throughout the book, and that changes her, and that changes the environment. I think we are responsible for our own agency, and I think the enslavement today is not power of one man or one woman. It's more power of what we don't see, the power, the invisible hand, so to speak. It's the Amazon that tells us to buy X, Y, and Z. It's the TikTok that says, watch this and that. So I think we have to fight for agency, because that's what we need to fight. And that's why it's important to know about people who have fought for it. And one of them is my hero, Gohar. Again,
Agency is an important. Yes, agency is an important aspect of all of our lives, because, and I'm glad that you held her up and gave her as a shining example of what could happen and what she can accomplish. And because her life was very interesting. So again, thank you, Afarin.
Afarin is fine. Everybody can call me Afarin. I don't get discouraged or anything. So
awesome. So thank you for being here. You'll have to come back, and we'll need to talk more. So
absolutely, I'll come back. Absolutely, I will make another appointment and come back and talk to your audience.
Very nice. You have a great day.
Pleasure.
Wait right there. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.